Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Play Arts Kai Batman Timeless Spartan Batman, which is the one I thought was going to be the best of all of them, and I have to say, I am pleasantly, I guess I should say surprised, because so far we've been a little hit or miss with this line. The steampunk Batman wasn't very well executed. Nice concept, I guess, but they just threw way too much stuff at the figure. This one has the right amount of restraint in the design, and I think it really suits the character well. And for the most part, it's executed properly. The engineering's good, the articulation's good. We have a few issues, but that's expected. So I'm very happy with it. So I think we should get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands roughly 27 centimeters to the top of his helmet, which makes him just under 10 3/4 inches. So he has some decent size to him. He's not the largest of the Play Arts Kai figures we've ever gotten, but he's up there, and he is loaded with detail. But like I said, not too much detail like the steampunk Batman. This guy has the right amount, and it looks really good. He's got a lot of armor, he's got a lot of leather, he's got a lot of cape. Not really a lot of cape, but the right amount of cape. Just very, very well done. The paint job looks good, and the sculpt is good, so I'm very pleased with this guy. So first of all, let's look at the accessories. We get two of these daggers that go in this little side holster thing on his belt. They do kind of get wedged in there based on the belt itself and the tips of the blades, but they do come out. So we get two of these guys right here that go right there, and then we get two more of them that go on the inside of the shield, because having daggers on the inside of your shield is always a good idea. Extra weapons, they do kind of fall out a little bit too easily, unless you really wedge them in there, and then they don't come out at all, so that's fine. So speaking of, we get a shield, which is a really cool shield. It's very well done. It's got the various metals, or at least the paint job, to make it look like various metals on there, so that's nice. It's all battle damaged. Now, the one bad thing about the shield is this right here, and then the one that he's holding are permanently connected to the shield. And as you can see, I don't have his arm fully connected, and that's because you have to put this gripping hand in there and then slide the arm through and try to connect them. And that's very difficult to do. It's also very difficult to get this hand on this strap, so you're going to need to hit it with a hairdryer or some hot water first just to make it a little bit easier. But it does all work, you just have to spend some time with it. We also get this sword, which is a really nice sword. Nicely detailed, lots of little nicks and dings, and it's painted well. The blade is different than the handle, and it fits in the scabbard on this side, so that's a very nice accessory. Of course, you can see here we have a hand meant for holding the sword, so it's got slightly angled gripping hand. This is a square gripping hand. Now, the one problem with that is we only get the other gripping hand for the sword. So we have one for either side, but we don't have a shield holding hand for either side, which I guess is okay, except if you want to put the sword in his left hand, you can't really put the sword in his right hand unless you want to use the other sword hand, but it doesn't hold the strap properly. So it's a little bit limited in that respect. Of course, he does come with the two fist hands that you would see in the package on the figure. And then we get two style pose hands, just because why not? It's always good to have the option to pose with these guys. Let's zoom in so you can see the detail a little bit. All of the hands have the leather straps on there with the little rivets. They're pretty well done, so I like that. He also comes with this really massive spear. The sculpt work on it's pretty fantastic too. I really like the way they got the metal with all the pitting and scratches and stuff on the ends. Really nice paintwork too. This end's a lot smaller, obviously, but still, it looks really cool. So it's a nice accessory, and it's, like I said, it's massive. So it's about 13 inches long, so definitely a cool accessory to have. And that's it for the accessory. So it's not a huge amount, but it's definitely enough, I think, to make the figure look pretty cool. Now, the thing about the shield is it has to go where his little bat fins go. So these are designed to be removable, and they do snap on a little bit, but they pop off fairly easily, so that's pretty good. You shouldn't really have any issue of them coming off if you don't want them to. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Let's get the shield off for the rest of the review so it's not just in the way. Let's do that, and we can put a style pose hand on there in the meantime. The hands on this guy do come off and on pretty easily, but they're not too loose, so that's a pretty good thing. Sometimes we get really loose hands with these guys or really tight hands. This is kind of like a nice balance. So first of all, I really, really like the aesthetic of this guy. They did a really good job. They nailed it. I think it's really fantastic. The sculpt is good. The paint is good, so it looks really good all around. Very, very pleased with that. Now, as far as the articulation goes, the head itself is on a double ball peg on top of the neck, and the neck itself is on, I believe, another double ball peg. It's really stiff, so I can't move it very much, but it doesn't seem to have that hinge in there that we don't like so much, so that's good. And all of this material is soft, all of this neck armor, so that won't get in the way of the articulation. You should be able to move his head just fine, however you really want to do it. This part of his cape is hinged. It just snaps in like that, so that won't get in the way at all, and it's nice and soft, as you can see. And that'll go back in like that. So that'll get out of the way of the shoulder if you need to move the arm up, which you can do, so that's good. For the shoulder, we have our ball hinge that you guys are familiar with if you collect Play Arts Kai figures. So it'll rotate on that hinge this way, and you already saw the hinge. And then the entire arm can rotate on the other part of that hinge, or you can just use the bicep swivel down here. So that's up to you. That's your call. And then for the elbow, we have that same type of hinge again, so it'll rotate at both ends if you want to, and then you get the range of motion better than 90 degrees. So that's pretty good. The elbow itself is still a little bit ugly. I don't know why they keep doing that. We don't need that overlap. Plus the paint works a little off color-wise, but we don't need that overlap. It does look good when it's down, but when you bend it, it doesn't look anywhere near the way it's supposed to. So that's an odd choice, if you ask me. I wish they wouldn't have done that. Let's get this guy back on because it looks cool. It does hide the elbow joint a little bit, so that's nice. And then the wrists are the same type of joint. I have noticed that on this guy, the hands don't go quite down as far as I would like, but I suppose we could fix that with a little bit of a drill bit. Just stick that in there and spin it around a little bit and you'll be okay, but otherwise it's not too bad in the wrists. The torso, it does have that hinged ball peg again, which I don't care for, but luckily the hinge on this one is really stiff, so I'm only really moving mine mostly around on the ball peg. And it does have really good range of motion. You can lean it side to side, you can lean it all the way back, but of course when you do that, you get that giant gap. That's the result of that ball, or that hinge that's in there, so that kind of ruins it. I cannot get the hinge to work, so that's kind of a bummer. So the diaphragm joint's not the best. Luckily, you probably don't want to lean them all the way back anyway, so you don't have to worry about the gapping all that much. And it's cool the way they made this separate piece hang down over it to just kind of give that illusion of not having that seam there for the joint. So I think that's pretty cool. Now before we move down to the waist, let's talk about the cape. We have really soft material up here that lets everything just move around. And then we get another one of the ball hinges that we're used to for the capes. So you can rotate it around either way or use the hinge if you want to, and that all works nicely. And of course you can rotate the cape on the bottom part of that ball hinge. And then we have two more parts down here which have the hinge on them. So this one here and this one down here. I have that one rotated. But they have the same type of articulation, so you can just spin those around however you want. It's not the best looking part, but it's good enough, and it's behind the figure, so you really don't need to worry about it that much. Now, one thing to note, and this may not be an issue for everybody, mine came like that, and I thought it looked really bad. So I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to be like this, which would make more sense based on the sculpt. So just be aware that if yours is backwards and you think it looks funny, just spin it around. So the cape's pretty good. It's not super heavy because it's basically half a cape. So that's also a good thing. You don't have to worry about him leaning back too much. His floating crotch piece is just that, a floating crotch piece, and it's not super bulky, so it doesn't look weird like a diaper like some of them have. And then the lower torso is connected to that by just a single ball peg, so you get pretty good range out of it all the way around. You can move him pretty well. I think he's going to be one of the ones that you get to actually pose, which, oops, I just kicked the camera, which we don't get that often on the Play Arts. Sometimes they don't feel like you're going to be able to pose them all that much despite the huge amount of articulation in some cases, but this one I think will be able to. So the hips are ratcheted going forward. You can bring them about that far, which isn't great, but it's good enough. If the legs are straight, it's almost 90 degrees, so it'll be okay. Then you can bring them out to the side pretty far, not a ridiculous amount. He's not going to do the splits anytime soon, but it should be enough. And then the thigh does rotate up at the joint like the older figures. He doesn't have, I thought he would, but mine doesn't want to do it. I thought he would have a swivel in here, but he doesn't seem to have one there. He does have a double jointed knee, which I am particularly happy with on this guy. The part down here is done really well. They don't have a giant chunk missing or anything like they normally do. And the part up here is the same way, but that's even hidden by the knee armor, so it looks pretty good. I do kind of wish this was all silver so that it wouldn't look funny when you do bend it, but you could just make the argument that it's a separate piece of armor, so I'm okay with that. I think it's a pretty good joint. It might be one of the best knee joints we've gotten from Play Arts. Pretty happy with that all around. And then for the ankle, we have our standard ball hinge again. Now the only problem with that is this plastic, even though it's a little bit soft, it's still pretty firm, so you're going to have a heck of a time rotating that ball joint around to give yourself an ankle rocker, so you're going to just have to use a little bit of finesse in there. But it will do it if you need it to, and you do get the toe hinge right there also, which is a pretty good toe hinge. So all in all, they did a pretty darn good job executing this figure, and it just looks really damn cool. So I'm going to say I recommend it 100%. I know it's at a higher price point than a lot of you want to pay. And because of that price point, you know, I might end up being one of those people that stops collecting Play Arts, but this one's really cool. Now, before we go, I want to show you the biggest problem with this guy. And luckily, I mean, it still looks cool, but this shoulder pad, they have it connected to his upper body again, which means once you start to pose the arm, it's going to get in the way and look really weird. Luckily, it's a really cool shoulder pad, so it's kind of excusable, but it would have been a much better idea to just give him something a little bit smaller and connect it to the shoulder itself so that it moves with the arm rather than, see, if you bring the arm forward, the shoulder pad doesn't really go with it. Now it's articulated on a little tiny ball hinge, so you can kind of move it around, but it's just not quite right. So that's a bit of a bummer, but despite that, it's still a really cool figure, so I'd still recommend it, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this one a lot. It should be in stock at Big Bad Toy Store pretty soon, so you might want to check that link in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.